Boo. Hello everyone. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and I am a scarecrow this Halloween. Happy Halloween. When you're seeing this video, it will be Halloween, and this video is recommending spooky books that are less than 300 pages. So if you want to get into the spooky moods, the spooky vibes this evening, here are some quick reads to get you there. I organized this video from the shortest recommendation to the longest. I had so much fun doing this makeup. I am not a professional makeup artist, but please enjoy my silly little makeup look while I talk about these books. The first recommendation at only 11 pages is the short story Flash Frame by Silvia Moreno Garcia. It is contained in this collection called This Strange Way of Dying, stories of magic, desire, and the fantastic. The short story Flash Frame is so good and really actually quite creepy, and of course it's only 11 pages. I don't really want to talk about what it's about because it's only 11 pages, but it has to do with spooky film. At 108 pages, we have Carmilla by, J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This is the precursor to Dracula. This is a short sapphic vampire horror, and it's a little dry because it's written in the 1800s or before, but it does have that spooky vampire vibe. So if you want to see the precursors to Dracula, there is Carmilla. I enjoyed this one, but again, it's a little bit dry, but it does get the vibes perfectly. At 128 pages, we have Eat the Rich by Sarah Gailey, illustrated by Pius Bach, and the color work was done by Roman Titov. This is a short little horror graphic novel about rich people being bad, and there's some cannibalism going on. I have a whole review up talking about this graphic novel up on my channel, talking about why it means so much to me as a disabled person, so I'll just leave that there. But this gets kind of graphic and kind of violent and has to do with has some disability representation as well. So if you like your stories in visual format, gosh, this hat is in the way. If you like your stories in a visual format, I highly recommend Eat the Rich. Genre hopping ever so slightly, we have The Scourge Between Stars by Ness Brown at 159 pages. This is a novella set in space where something has invaded the ship that these people are on. And this, I would say, is pretty scary. I mean, space in general is kind of spooky ooky, and so I try to find like space horror or space thrillers because it's just kind of, space in general kind of scares me. And this has to do with some kind of creature boarding the ship as well, so you have that added element. In terms of like spookiness, this is pretty scary. Didn't quite like meet the threshold for me of like, I can't read this in the dark, but the vibes were there. Speaking of vibes, we have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is a novella retelling of the Edgar Allan Poe short story, The Fall of the House of Usher. Now this is, how many pages? This is 165 pages, very short. We are following Alex Easton, who is a soldier, and they are called to the house of a friend, the estate of a friend whose sister is dying, and creepy stuff happens. This one is kind of scary. Honestly, there were moments in here where I was really freaked out and was kind of like, ooh, I can't read this at night type of thing. It has to do with mushrooms. So if you don't like fungus, maybe steer clear, but it's so short, you could get through it rather quickly. Elegy for the Undead is a little bit different because it's more of a literary fiction romance set in the backdrop of a zombie apocalypse. So there is some vibes, there is some violence because of the zombie apocalypse, but that's all happening kind of in the background. We're really following this gay couple at the start of their relationship, during their relationship, and then at the end of their relationship through this zombie apocalypse. And this is heart-wrenching, gut-punching, heart-wrenching. So it's not exactly scary, but it does have some zombie spooky vibes happening in the background if you're more of a literary fiction reader. Elegy for the Undead is 171 pages. At 185 pages is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. I need to get a copy of this. I talk about this all the time on my channel, and I still don't have a copy. This is a historical fantasy horror that gets pretty violent and graphic about a group of KKK hunters who are all women. And the KKK in this world are actual, like, demonic monsters that are really terrifying. I mean, the KKK in real life is terrifying and awful, but the monsters in here are truly grotesque and disgusting. And this is P. Djeli Clark at his finest, in my opinion. This is my favorite thing I've read by the author, and it's so short. Another literary leaning horror is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. If you're looking for some gorgeous writing, I highly recommend. This is a two timeline story where we're following this couple of women who, one of them went on a deep sea expedition and something happened, and then we're following the aftermath of that expedition, as maybe she's turning into some kind of creature. And this really has to deal with grief, and it's very literary and beautifully written and sapphic and sad. If you're looking again for like a horrific kind of gross gut punch, Our Wives Under the Sea, kind of in the similar vein as Elegy for the Undead. And this book is 232 pages, so still pretty short. One of my favorite books of all time at 235 pages is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a novel written as in letters, an epistolary novel written to Dracula from one of his brides after she has killed him. And so we're kind of watching their relationship unfold, and it's a very toxic and abusive relationship. This is also queer and polyamorous, but not necessarily, more like great polyamory rep, because she doesn't ask for this type of relationship, it just kind of happens to her. But we got vampires, we've got gore, we've got death in here. The vibes are gothic and immaculate, and it, again, is a gut punch, but it's not necessarily literary, in my opinion, but it's just sad. It's just sad in the end, but I adore this little novella. Nonfiction readers, I have something for you too. And at 247 pages is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is one of my favorite reads I've ever read. This is a nonfiction about Carmen Maria Machado and her relationship that she had with an abusive ex-girlfriend and how that unfolded. And she tells that story through the lens of a haunted house and the tropes surrounding a haunted house. She explores in little vignettes that have to do with that particular chapter in their relationship. This is one of the most beautifully written nonfictions I've ever read. It reads like fiction, but it's true. And using that lens is a really interesting angle to tell what happened in this abusive sapphic relationship. I highly recommend it. It's not quite as gut punchy, but it is sad and a little distressing to read at times. It's spooky because of the haunted house theming, not necessarily, and it's a little scary with some of the abuse that happens on page, but you know she comes out of it in the end okay. Got a couple of classics here. At 248 pages is The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is about a despicable character who has sold his soul to be beautiful forever and immortalized in a painting. And the painting kind of absorbs all of his badness instead of him. And this is Oscar Wilde at one of his darkest moments, but it's an interesting story and a metaphor about morality and, you know, being a good person. It's horror in that way that is kind of creepy, but I wouldn't say this is scary. It's not it's not in the same vein as some of these other horror reads. At 288 pages, we have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I really think this one is worth your time. Of course, this is a classic tale of, you know, resurrection, but the creature is such an interesting conduit. He has some biting criticism to say once he is reanimated in the world that I think many people would find really interesting. This is a slower paced read, but it still is less than 200 or less than 300 pages. I do highly recommend Frankenstein. This is my college copy with an additional like essays written in the back, but the meat of the story is only about 280 pages. Last and certainly not least, if you've been keeping track, this is the 13th recommendation. Ha 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 ha. See what I did there? We have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride at 289 pages. This is about the bridegroom who marries a woman named Indigo, and she has one stipulation: to never ask about her past, and of course the past comes back to haunt them. This is kind of a Bluebeard retelling a little bit. This has beautiful writing. It's very spooky and creepy in a way that's like what's real and what's your imagination type of thing. A little bit of an unreliable narrator thing going on. And again, it's less than 300 pages. Very beautifully written. Those are the 13 short spooky recommendations I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Halloween, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Goodbye!